Meeting to order. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce the board. We'll start from the end.
Donna Cook.
And David Martin.
Anil Vera.
Frank Lamia.
Thank you. Our first order of business is approval of the minutes.
Chairman, I move to accept the minutes as they are read, or as they are in print.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Our first order of business is BOA 21.09. It's a public hearing to consider the request of Richard and Julie Clay for setback variance to allow for a swimming pool for the property located at 306 North Bayview.
Okay, good afternoon. This is BOA 21.09. Here we have our zoning and our aerial map of the subject site. The property is zoned R2, medium density, single family, residential. The applicant, Robert Brown, is requesting a side setback variance to allow a swimming pool on the property. Again, the property is zoned R2, and according to the zoning ordinance, accessory structures such as pools shall be situated no nearer than the principal structure along side streets and behind the rear building line of the principal structure. The applicant has noted three main justifications for their request. The first is that their lot is smaller than the minimum lot area required. In R2 zoning districts, the requirement is 10,500 square feet, and their property is about 9,400 square feet. The lot does not meet the minimum width requirement. The requirement in R2 zoning districts is 75 feet in width, and their property is 60 feet in width in some areas. And then the last thing is the subject property has an extreme uphill slope. According to the applicant, the property is relatively level from the west front of the house to the east rear of the house, and then the property slopes steeply uphill, with the final 35 feet being approximately 8 feet above grade of the remainder of the property. Here we have a map of the existing conditions. So you see the existing dwelling, and then there is an existing carport and existing storage. Here you have the proposed site plan. The applicant is proposing a pool to be situated 6 feet, 6 inches from the property line along Blakeney Avenue. There will be other additions to the rear of the existing home, and then the addition of a fence along Blakeney Avenue. Here you have an images that indicate the existing conditions on the lot. The yellow areas indicate existing areas where the home encroaches in the setback. So you see along the front and along the southernmost property line, the home already encroaches in the setbacks. And additionally, the carport area is above what is allowed in R2 districts. It is 25% is the requirement, and they're showing about 27% of the rear yard. Staff also finds that the pool could possibly be placed so that it can be situated within the required setback. So if you look at the bottom image, you see that we have kind of situated the pool within those required setbacks, the 20 foot along Blakeney Avenue. And we also acknowledge that the intent of the side street setback is to preserve the corner lot, to preserve the street view. Additionally, there are large trees on site that could be disturbed as a result of the addition or the fence or wall. A right-of-way permit could be required, and the city horticultural list would have to review this prior to the issuance of a building permit. And then lastly, a small wooden bridge is currently on the north side of the property, and the pool appears that it would be located in its place. If the variance was approved, review would be required by the Public Works Department. Staff recommends the Board of Adjustment denial of case BOA 21.09 based on the previous information. That is all that I have, unless you have any questions.
Got a question.
Mhm.
So the pool that we drew in, that was the staff drawing the pool or the
Yes.
applicant?
This image to the bottom image is staff locating within the setbacks, and then this is the proposed location, which is approximately 6 feet, 6 inches from the property line.
Thank you.
I have a question. Are there any variances required to build out the house addition that they're showing? Or is that within zoning? Do we know?
The additions are kept within the setbacks. And I believe we talked about this, didn't address this, but if they did add it to a second story, that would be confined within the setbacks. So if there was any work on the second floor. And we do allow a tie-in. Obviously, we're not gonna cracker jack that, the roof can go from existing exterior wall to the tie-in to the second floor.
And we would have to calculate site coverage as well on the lot, in that I had not calculated the coverage of what was proposed here. But anything that would be under roof would be calculated in site coverage.
For the impervious surface calculations.
Right.
And I will say on this one, we get a lot of variance requests, and I think y'all have heard us say it before, we get a lot of substandard lots. And they say, because I have a smaller lot. Well, that a lot of times is not unique. That's also a key word in the variance. So a lot of fruit and nut, they're same. So if everybody has 66, foot wide lots, that's not really a need for a variance. There is a hardship here. This is a regular size yacht lot. It is unique to the lot. And then we looked at ways that this could be done, and I think the expansions to the house almost, it's also not about man-made, what you're imposing on the land. So what it came down to, I think for us, and I don't want to speak exactly for Samara, is what the street side setbacks there for to begin with. It's to preserve a street frontage. The same way the front setbacks there. It's there to, we're actually very generous. A lot of cities on corner lots require a front setback on both sides of the corner. We allow 20 feet in lieu of so that's why you kind of get those jut outs. You're driving down the street, everybody's at 35, and then that last house can be at 20 if they're fronting the other street. So, this is, I think, a tough, decision for the board, because there is a hardship here. This lot meets the criteria of a hardship, so it's about what do we allow in that hardship scenario.
Have we allowed other ones around there to proceed outside?
No, and we do not have a distinction of pools either in our zoning code. So some cities distinguish between a pool and a structure, above ground structure. We do not. So it falls under the accessory structure. So you can find anomalies everywhere when you've been around 126 years or 20. So I won't say there's not a pool in a side yard. There actually, I believe, 2 blocks to the north you'll find one. I don't know when that was approved and done. You can find some unzoned where that's done, but to my knowledge, we haven't approved anything in recent memory.
So even if it doesn't have a roof, it's still considered an accessory?
That there's a blanket statement for accessory structures in Fairhope zoning code. That can be anything from a batting cage, anything that's permanent, a pool, obviously a garage, things like that. We don't make a distinction between accessory dwelling units, structures, and buildings.
Okay.
Does this pool that you drew in, does it have to be a certain distance from the house?
10 feet
10 feet, yes.
is the requirement from the house. We showed that, and Again, there's always gray areas on how you define something, so a accessory structure should be located to the rear of a building. If you can imagine somebody building a U-shaped house, we have allowed the pool to be tucked in there. So while it's not to the most rear building line, we have allowed that. So there's a precedent there, so looking at that, that might not meet the, that's that gray area of what is behind the rear building line. But we looked at that and kind of, in the most we could give, that keeps the front yard intact. It's behind a portion of the rear of the house. So, but if it could be a building, why not a pool? Was kind of the logic with that.
So the drawing that you drew, is it the same size as that he's wanting on the other property?
Yes.
The pool itself we didn't draw Samara, will you go back one? You can see the deck is bigger, the deck area around the pool, we did not put that in, but otherwise it's the
Same
same.
side.
Are there any regulations on the height of the wall along the property line?
Yes, that's another area where we, in our zoning ordinance, doesn't clarify on a street side setback. So behind the front building line of the house, you can be 8 foot. In front, if you put a fence in front of the front building line, it has to be 4 foot maximum. So,
this one meets the requirements as far as the 8-foot wall.
yes,
Okay,
whether the pool's there or not.
Right.
okay.
And I think that's maybe something we should look at. If you've got a corner lot, do you allow the 8-foot fence? But that's what the regulations are.
Okay.
right now.
A portion of the fence that faces the front of the lot, would that be, would you have to do that at 4 feet? Would you be limited to that?
No, it's behind the front building line. So regardless of where the front setback is, wherever the building is built, so as long as they stay behind that as measured from the front of the lot, which is a long baby. So the fence would be in compliance with our codes.
Okay.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come up and give some more light on this to us? If you'll state your name for us, for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert Brown, 15401 Scenic 98. I'm here tonight on behalf of Richard and Julie Clay, seeking this variance to put in their pool. To start with, obviously, if we met all the ordinances, we wouldn't be here tonight. So there is a hardship. The landowner wants to improve his property. You heard Mr. Martin make the statement about the privacy wall will be allowed. So if there's a swimming pool behind that privacy wall, really what are we going to deny tonight? If they put the privacy wall up and they put a courtyard, it's still going to have the same streetscape. Secondly, there's 3 existing properties on the corner of Bayview and corner lots. I know past wrongs don't make a right, but setting a precedent, 58 North Bayview on the corner of Atchison has a side pool. 114 North Bayview, where I currently have a project going, had a side yard pool within the setback. And 256 North Bayview has a pool in the side yard setback. Just saying that we're not asking for an anomaly here. I appreciate y'all's time for being here tonight and what your commitment to the city is. And I also kind of want to end with, what would Fairhope do? What would Fairhope want? This man's trying to improve his parents' house, trying to restore a historic structure, make necessary improvements to bring it into modern day living. And I believe if you polled 100 Fairhopians, 100 of them would say, grant the variance to save this house and let the man put the pool in. Otherwise, I'm afraid he's not going to be able to do what he wants to. He'll put the pool within the setback, but the house is going to have to be torn down in order to achieve that. So I ask all of y'all that take that in consideration for tonight's vote. Thank you. You have any questions?
Why does the house have to be torn down to put the pool closer to the house?
This Mr. and Miss Clay have hired an architect to come up with an appealing design for improvements. They're also the house currently has a second floor on it, and they're trying to minimize the height of the house because of the way the lot slopes. And there's no way to achieve first floor improvements square footage wise and get the pool, maintain that 10 foot from the structure. So that's why they're here seeking the variance.
You know
I
what?
mean, and staff did a great job putting that pool in there, but I don't think that's gonna pass the architectural review board.
You know what the relationship of the wall is along Blakeney to the trees? If the wall went in, what would happen to the trees?
I cannot answer that, and as Hunter mentioned, that would have to go before the city to get approval. You know,
Yeah.
it would be taken into consideration.
And I will say, the reason we put that in there is, you see, we have a recommendation of no, because there's a precedent, and I think sometimes this board can make a decision on where that's warranted, where it's not. Really, that slide, and I think those 2 bullet points are more if the board is leaning toward granting that, we make those a condition so that there's also, and I don't, this is a question we had, and we went out, and there's a lot of overgrowth kind of right in that area. There is a low area. And I don't know if there's a drain right
That was a drainage like a century ago. It's no longer drains from the rear of the property.
Okay. And so those kind of things would have to be vetted, and the right-of-way permit would do that. Just because it is close enough to those tree roots, we'd look at the right-of-way permit, make sure, and what we do at that permitting, our arborist or tree, our arborist goes out and takes a look, make sure there's nothing to mitigate with the tree roots, and then Public Works would also be able to see, all right, is that historic drain in there, and would it cause any problems? So it's the vetting process of the actual construction and making sure that would happen.
Robert, you mentioned something, architectural review board.
I was kidding.
Oh, you just kidding, okay. All right. Just wondering if there's something I didn't know.
Can you go back over those other homes that have the same situation? And did they get permits, or and how long ago?
Yeah, I can't answer that, Donna. I mean, yes, they've been there a while, but the corner of, if you turn off of Magnolia heading north on North Bayview, that first corner there is Atchison. It has a pool
Okay.
on the
I know
corner of
that one,
Bayview and
yeah.
Atchison. And you keep going around that S-curve, and we just demoed a house about 8 months ago on the corner of Oak and Bayview. It had a lap pool in the side that was in the
Okay.
setback. And if you keep going down to the next, not the next one, but the second one after that is Powell. It's on the corner of Bayview and Powell. It's got a 6-foot privacy fence with ivy, and, you know, it's very, you can't see the pool in there, but if you slow down and look, there's an umbrella and blue water in there.
Okay.
And so we'd be the next corner lot.
I have a question. So if you build a fence on that, what's that road, Blakeney? Is that-
Blakeney.
Blakeney. If you build a fence, it has to be how many feet from the road? 20
Be-
feet?
Whatever is established by the
I'm
property
sorry,
line.
checking that.
20 feet from the road.
20 feet from the property line, so there is some distance in the image and right there that what you don't see in that image, it's kind of zoomed in. From the property line to the edge of pavement is 20 feet,
But what he's saying is the fence can actually go on the property line.
property line, yes. And I do think that's kind of an oversight in our ordinance, that as we move through this comp plan, y'all know we have meetings we can discuss, but that's what it is today.
It looks to me like the proposed site plan, they don't show the trees that are there at this time. Does that mean that they're intending to remove them all?
They cannot remove the trees. The trees are in the right of way. What we would just make sure of is any construction, since you're digging down in a pool,
But
they're not getting into the root
I would
sufficiently.
like to know the proximity of the trees to their proposed site plan. Because they're
If you go
gonna
back to sheet 4,
have a lot of leaves in that
shows
pool.
right there.
So, I don't know if we can zoom in on this. This is,
Sheet 4 in the packet.
yes, so just behind those red bushes, the ground kind of dips down. In your, is this the same only one in the packet from the aerial, from the street view? Okay.
That's where that little bridge is, correct?
Yeah, basically the outside corner of that bridge
Yeah.
is the property.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So if you're looking there, so anything from that corner of the bridge to the edge of pavement's all in the right of way.
Yeah.
To give you a perspective.
No, if you don't mind, here's a
Survey that shows making in relation to where that wall would be, so there's some nice space here on that. There's the road line, there's the privacy wall back here, so there's trees along the street.
That's the road right there.
This is the edge of the road.
Oh, that's the road. That's the road there.
Here's the road, this is the edge of the
Right.
road. And there's the,
That's the property wall.
This is the setback line.
No, here's the setback. There's the setback.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions for our applicant?
Thank you all
you.
again.
I'd like to open the floor to the public portion of the meeting. If anybody would like to speak for or against it from the public.
And Mr. Chairman, before we do that,
Yep.
we did receive, I believe you had received one in your packet. We received three total letters in opposition from neighbors that received the notification.
Okay.
And we got those out.
And did they tell, did they say what their objections were? Okay.
Somewhere the street view as you're from Blakely, I think a lot of people see the bay from that. So
From that area?
We're worried about the wall and blocking that view.
But the main concern is blocking the view. And if the wall is there, no matter what, the view's still gonna be blocked, right?
That's,
And I'm just asking the question,
Yeah.
I mean,
we, is there an alternative for a wall that's not opaque? Yes, but do you want that if you have a swimming pool? But in general, a fence can be built up to 8 feet where it's shown right now, whether the pool's there or not.
okay.
But there's not a lot of, logically, there's not a lot of reason to build an opaque fence if you don't have a pool.
We don't see that on the street side, in the street side setback very often, but it does happen. There are some.
So we received 3 letters for opposition, is that correct?
There's one.
Yeah, I got that. Okay,
And I can give you a copy of those if you want to glance at them.
please.
Um,
Did y'all get a copy of these 3?
I do.
No, I
Can I
read
ask him a question still?
Anil, did we open the public hearing?
Oh, we did.
Okay. Can we, if it's okay to let if there's anyone from the public speak, and then
Then we
we
can
can
come
close
back.
that and ask again?
Is there anybody from the public? If you'll come up and state your name and address for us, please.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Leon McLaughlin. I live in the house just to the east of the site plan there on Blakeney, 108 Blakeney. One of the letters of opposition was for me. I might hand these.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll share.
This view was taken from my front porch, looking over. If you could put the proposed site plan up here so they could see some, either of those, that'd be fine. It was taken from the right side, looking due west. You can see the front edge of the carport there. My wife and I lived on this house, in this house, and we built the house with the idea of being able to look at the water from the front porch, as you can see there. We moved into the home in 2007. Speaking of compromised lots, our lot is 48 feet wide. It's smaller than the 60 feet on this one. The main problem that we have with it is that if the pool is built, there will be an 8-foot wall. And as you can see from the picture, an 8-foot wall would pretty well block our view, looking out that way. Also, as far as this, my neighbor who lives on 110 Blakeney, he sent a letter of opposition. You probably have a copy of that, Mr. Don DeGoots. And he had the same opinion. He has a porch on the left side of his house, which is similar to mine, so he can sit out there and see the bay. The view of the bay is a lot clearer in the wintertime, as you can tell by all the leaves there, but we can see it. If the setback is put out like it's described there on the site plan, the 8-foot fence would be on the edge of the road, essentially, and pretty well be a barrier to any view from the south side of Blakeney. For this reason, I feel there should be some other site for the pool. As far as the setback goes, I don't object that much to the pool, but primarily I object to a 6 or 8 foot wall being a barrier to vision. Are there any questions or anything you'd like to ask me?
So, Mr. McGoffin, the way I understand it, you're fine with the pool, but the wall is the biggest concern, and the wall we have no control over, correct?
That's correct.
Well-
We can ask for adjustments, maybe it kind of hugs the northern boundary of the pool a little bit more and frees up a little bit more of the area. Maybe it's reduced to 6 feet. There's.
As a compromise between the two?
As a compromise, I think that's a reasonable request. We can't dictate that.
Yeah, but a 6 foot wall, looking at this picture, would still be a barrier, though.
And I do want to refer to, and we don't have it here, it's not right at the edge of the road.
Right.
Whether it's approved or not, that's at the kind of inside that tree line where the shrubs were. So, but I do think there's an opportunity to kind of cut that corner off in plans that would more closely hug the pool if that was approved. That would free up a little bit of that space.
Is there any way the city can, instead of having the pool 10 feet from the house, can they bring it a little closer to the house? Is that something the city?
I think we can work with that. It's a little tough. I don't know exactly structurally what we're seeing on the deck there. We have in the past worked on some solutions where that was an only option. You got to get a structural engineer to make sure a pool that close to a house is not creating any. But that's kind of a unique situation. But there is an opportunity for that.
So would that, if we did that, would that help the fence and the view, or not really?
Not as shown.
But the problem is the fence can be built no matter what. The fence, we can't say anything about the fence that's going on the property line if they decide to build it, they can build it.
Right.
It's my understanding that the property line on the site plan is the dotted line,
No, sir, that's a setback line.
a setback line. All right, property line would be within 10 feet of the road?
No,
Or it
it's
could
a
be.
little bit greater. Right under the P on the drawing that's on the screen is the edge of pavement. It's a line that actually goes off the screen so that you can't see here.
And it's the one that says 8-inch CMU wall. It's kind of designated where the wall's going.
This is the property line. The edge of pavement, as you see it, kind of curves up here. So it's 25 feet from the property line to the edge of the pavement.
Okay.
If you see, oh, here's the, and this is the same that you just saw. So this is the edge of the pavement. So this area here is city right of way, where the trees in that area is. This is the property line. So where they're proposing the pools here, this won't be touched. We won't allow anything to be built within the right of way. So where this dimension, about 18 feet from this line to here, 20 feet, you can see that that's maybe 20, 30 feet from the edge of their property line to the, what we call the edge of their line. Yeah, at least 30 feet from center line. If that's 20, I'd say you're probably 30 feet from the edge of the pavement to the property line.
Again, the view with the picture I have, you see right here. It's right where the fence.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Was it-
Mr. DeGoots on 110 Blakeney had probably a little better presentation as far as his letter of having a problem denial, if y'all have read that. Do they have copies of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Can I ask another question to Robert? Or,
Yeah.
so if this were approved, how could we make sure that they never put like a pool enclosure over something like that?
We would say no to that. They'd have to get a permit for that structure. We would say no to
Why would you say no?
that. This is only for a pool,
Okay.
so the way that's advertised, that
Oh, because
this
of
is
the
not
variance.
for, yeah. So the variance, and I would recommend, if you do choose to give a variance, that it is for a pool and a pool only, not, please do not word it as an accessory building.
I have a question about hardship in this. Maybe you can answer this. But it looks like the reason that the pool is going out into the setback is because they're going to build all this other stuff. You know, they're going to build an addition, and then they're going to build this big porch, and that pushes the pool into the setback. So how is that a hardship? I mean, they're creating their own hardship.
And I think that's the challenge, the ordinance, we oftentimes see a variant, see a hardship, but to what extent is that I know we had one recently where someone was asking for a variance of 20 feet. He's like, no, that's not appropriate, but, 3 feet. Can you accommodate that? So there's, as you've seen the description on what a hardship is, it's about the land, it's about the size, shape of the lot, topography. That's very clearly here. There's no other lot
Yeah, but they,
We can see
that's the part,
shaped like this.
that's the part I'm confused about, because they can put the pool in the setback, but they can't when they build all this other stuff. So
Well,
they've
and that's
created.
where it's to what extent is that allowable?
Creating their own.
And I think that's what this board has to determine. I mean, there's, by our checklist on a hardship, the lot itself has a hardship. It is undersized, it's irregularly shaped, it's unique. Then what is allowable? And that's kind of what we looked at there, where the additions are created. So, you know, that's why our recommendation was where it was. And if there's a reason to approve, then I think this board is charged with determining that, so that we're not creating, I mean, a precedent for just every situation.
I need to close the public portion, and then I need to ask Robert a question. So is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak for or against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Robert, I have a question. So this addition that they're going to have, could they modify that and put the pool between the garage and the back part of that house?
So
Possibly?
I can't speak, on behalf of the architect, but I guess, while yes, they are creating their own hardship,
Mhm.
I would go back a step further and say the hardship is trying to save this historic house and leave as much of it intact as possible while adding additional square footage on the first floor to make it comfortable for modern living. So that's where the hardship is created, is trying to save this historic house. And the architect came up with this plan as far as trying to, I can't remember the amount of feet that the lot slopes, but the carport sits probably 5 or 6 feet higher than the finished floor of the house. So back to the hardship that Hunter's referring to, the topography of this lot is very challenging in itself.
So from the garage to the house, the garage is higher than the
The
house.
garage is higher than the house.
So could you fix that with a retaining wall?
They're gonna have to put a retaining wall to, put the new garage, because the carport that's there is non-conforming, so that's coming down.
It is coming.
Yeah, the carport that's non-conforming is coming down.
So where would the new carport be?
It's going where the existing one is, but just
Oh,
smaller.
But just a smaller.
So will it be in compliance at that point?
Yes.
25%?
So the existing carport that you have is being removed, is that correct?
Yes.
And rebuilt at the same location?
In the general same location, yes. On top of the hill, if you will. And then you'll come down steps to the new house, back into the house.
All right, so out of curiosity, with that new carport, does it go further north? And based on the pictures that I'm looking at here, is it going to encroach on that view anymore, or is it basically still in that same footprint?
It's basically the same footprint. It's not near as long as what is there.
Okay.
And we didn't, I didn't know that.
It's not that it's on here, but I'm just asking the question.
So an accessory structure can be no nearer to the street than the principal structure.
Okay.
So that would have to sit back, which is, I mean, and I understand the irony of everything we have set up to protect that front street light, except for walls and fences on corner lots. That's kind of a.
Robert, I don't mean to redraw your whole house, but, so if you take the existing carport and you're making it shallower, is that correct? It's not going to be as long as it was?
Correct.
Is there not enough room to put the swimming pool kind of in back of that garage?
Well, that's there again, getting into kind of site plan and architecture, if you will.
Review,
You
okay.
don't want to, if you're staying in your house, be looking at the bottom of your carport and your swimming pool up there. You'd rather have the view of the pool. And they're kind of, this side yard that we're asking for the variance really is their backyard, if you will. I also want
If
to,
they're going to rebuild the carport, are they going to want that variance that's now marked in yellow? Or will they have to apply for
No,
it,
it'll-
or are they going to keep to?
The new accessory structure, garage, carport will meet the requirements.
I didn't read that anywhere in the material, I guess.
And- No, but that, if it comes down, we didn't really discuss that. I know at one point we did look, I didn't realize that was coming down in this proposal, but that's just standard. It would only be allowed 25% of the
Right.
rear yard and have to
So
be
if it's
located.
27, then it's being reduced by 2%.
Correct.
And that's rough math based on not a survey, but just online measuring it.
And another reason I wanted to come back up here, I forgot to mention, the neighbor to the east brought up a good point about the height of that wall. Like I said, I have a current project just down the street, and everybody that has stopped at that project said they're fine with the pool, they just worry about the wall. So if you look at that proposed site plan, you've got the wall that goes along Blakeney. That wall is gonna step up, like I said, from the corner of Bayview to where the corner of that wall is by the new driveway, it's probably more like 8 feet of elevation. So if you stand at one spot, that wall's gonna drop, step down 8 feet to get to where we're not any taller than 8 feet at the front. If you turn that wall back to the garage, it's gonna be 8 foot when you're standing at the pool. So it's basically gonna be a retaining wall with about 3 foot of fence above it, and you probably have some landscaping or something to give some privacy, but otherwise, that wall on the east side of this pool would be 12 or 13 foot tall, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, he's not gonna have a 13-foot tall wall inside that courtyard.
All right.
Do you plan to put a wall on, I guess that would be the east side of the garage?
No.
So the existing house is just that rectangular portion, and then everything in back of it is what the new addition is. Is that correct?
No, it's the front as well as our existing.
So that's existing. And that's
Proposed.
And what we're showing in that slide is the existing.
I'm not following that.
It's a little hard to see the setback line here in this one. But it's parallel with the northern property line. It's the dash line you see that kind of goes through the right to the south of the pool.
Between the house and the pool decking, that's patio?
That covered the pool in the house. I see
That's all
those,
patio,
it's in
that
covered patio.
Oh, well, there's a covered patio in between the house and the pool, yes, ma'am.
covered patio.
Well, like an entry porch.
So that's keeping it, that's the reason for the variance then. Without that covered patio and a smaller patio, you could stick it in the existing, or in the lines, seems to me.
There's the patio and the one addition just to the east of the stair, or to the west of the stairs. There's the major
So that's probably 10, yeah.
Is there any other questions from the board members? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I would like someone to make a motion.
You can make it?
No, I would like someone to make it.
Well, in light of what I'm hearing, I make a motion to approve based on the biggest concern that I hear is that it's the fence is the issue. The pool's not the issue because the pool's low lying.
Mhm.
And the concern is the fence is going to block the view. But the fence can be built no matter what. The other problem is if you don't allow it and the house is torn down, then there's no telling what they build and how far up to the setback lines that they build at that point, and what else it could block at that point.
Well, they'd have to come in for a variance if they're
They
gonna
wouldn't,
be,
because if they're in their setbacks, they can build
yeah,
whatever.
within the setback,
Right.
right.
So, based on the setbacks that I'm looking at, if this house was turned and it came into the setbacks, it's gonna block even more view in that northeast corner. Because if they tear the house down, they can build whatever they want at that point.
But they gotta build it in the setback.
Right.
So they have to be 35 feet from the front and 20 from the.
But they can still put the fence out there. So I guess kind of the way I'm looking at it right here, these are your setbacks. This is your garage. So if they came in here and they wanted to build their house right in here, they're blocking the view even more, because if they go to a two-story, they're blocking the view that much more.
This is a two-story.
And it's farther out here, which is past the setback in this portion. But the concern would be tearing all this down, and then all of a sudden you really block the view, and the fence still goes on. So if you just leave this, and you know the house is tucked away and out of the way, then it's not going to block these people's view up here. Does that make sense?
But we don't have any control over fence height, is that correct?
We do, not limiting on this site. So the way the fences read, if it's in front of the front building line, it has to be 4 feet maximum. Behind the rear of the front building line, it is 8 foot maximum.
But if he
So the
gives a
front building-
if we give a variance, can we say the fence can only be 4 feet tall
Jump over that.
or
Yeah,
5 feet?
And I know there, Frank, what's our building code? Do you,
I think it's 6 feet.
6 feet is
For
what I was thinking.
For
It
a,
has to be
for a swimming pool fence?
for a
As far
swimming
as
pool.
fences in general.
4 feet?
Okay.
4 feet.
For a swimming pool, it has to be 4 feet.
Gates that are lockable.
Well, that's not a privacy fence.
Right.
I would think the purpose of this is a privacy fence.
Okay.
You need a motion.
So you have a motion, would you repeat it? I didn't catch it.
To approve the pool
To approve the pool, okay.
Approve the variance.
for the pool, because fence isn't in question.
May I make
Go
a
ahead.
recommendation to the board, if you're going to recommend approval, to add 2 conditions.
Okay.
One stating that it will be require a right-of-way permit for review of drainage and the arborist. And then 2, just to make sure we're memorializing that, it should not encroach on the maximum lot coverage.
Okay. So
You can just say as recommended by staff, with staff recommendation.
with staff recommendation,
And
based on,
we'll put that in minutes and y'all can approve that language next month.
Okay. So we got a motion from you. Do I have a second on his motion? Any seconds? So motion dies, and do we have another motion?
I make a motion that we deny BOA 2109 for a side setback variance at 306 North Bayview.
And do I have a second on the motion?
Second. I'll second
Okay.
it.
We'll take a roll call vote, please. Donna?
Aye.
no.
Aye.
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 So motion is denied.
That's 2 months in a row y'all denied the first one. The first motion.
Okay. Is there any old or new business?
I do want to, just every opportunity I get, I know y'all, we've made some invites this week to start our comp plan kickoff. Next 3 days, the team that we've hired will be in town. Monday night is a public meeting at the Nick Center from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So everyone is welcome. that'll kind of kick the ball rolling for a project that'll probably take a couple of years to get to. So any input you can give us, be there, we would appreciate it.
And so when we go to these meetings, do we just kind of say what's on your mind or what you don't like about the city?
Well, you got my number, don't you? I think the big goal for Wednesday's meeting is to first introduce the team, what the mission is, they'll explain that. So about 45-minute presentation, and then the rest will be working through some exercises and talking to the design teams and engineers we've hired. And hopefully what we're able to accomplish this time is get a lot of feedback on the front end and try to distill that into one vision that we can turn into codes and regulations. So yes, if all you got is negative things to say, then great, but it's also sometimes helpful
Or
to know
positive things
what's
that
working.
would work?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is working, but, if I had to describe our main goal, it's what do we want Fairhope to be in the future? And that's a hard thing to distill because everybody has their own opinion, especially when you try to put it into a plan that everybody, feels comfortable with, that at least they had a say. So that's our goal. We're going to try a few different things this time as far as the engagement and how we get people's input. We don't want any more anonymous surveys that one person can go in and fill out 600 online surveys, so we're trying some different tools. But there will be follow-up meetings. Kind of a big picture, we're going to have a kickoff meeting Wednesday night, and then through February, we're going to have more meetings in different locations. So public or open meetings at different locations around town, at least 2 a month into February. Then the team will go back to work, get some ideas and options out there, and then we'll have another round of public meetings to present those ideas and see what they did right, what they did wrong, and see if we can get to something that the Planning Commission can adopt as a comprehensive plan.
All right. Thank you. Have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.